So tell us a bit about your life, your growing up, your life journey.
I'm a single child. I was raised by my single parent mother. Life growing up was pretty hectic. She had to work 2 jobs and I didn't see her often, but she was a very proactive mother, making sure that I was in many different types of programs and getting a lot of culture into my life.
Where did you grow up? What was life like growing up?
I grew up in Oakland, East Oakland. It was pretty violent. When I was about 8, my mother moved us to Alameda.
So tell us a bit about some of the stresses that you've noticed, that you've experienced since childhood. You mentioned the violence in East Oakland. You know, what was it like? How did it make you feel?
Just getting on the buses in the morning was pretty traumatic,
Yes.
just to get to school. Whether
Yes.
there was fighting, drug use, homeless people who might have been mentally ill, trying to get the money to get on the bus,
Yes.
having enough money for lunch,
Yes.
getting to school. There was school crowding, 30, 40 students to one teacher.
Yes.
And the teachers were usually burnt out in the East Oakland schools.
Yes. So students stressed out with the crime, the violence, the poverty and so on. Teachers stressed out, dealing with stressed out students. It seems that so many of us are so chronically stressed out. So in your journey, your life's journey, what have you found that helps?
Yoga, Qigong, most of the Ayurvedic practices, spirituality, meditation,
Around a healthy
herbology.
lifestyle. So tell us a bit about yoga. When did you start practicing it? What brought you to yoga? And what has it done for you?
I was about 10 years old when my mom started to meditate, and she would often have me sit with her. And even though I didn't understand what she was doing, it was just quiet time. And when I was about 14, I started taking Hatha yoga at a local gym. And by the time I was 16, I had my own regular practice.
Beautiful. And how did that help? What difference did it make?
I had severe atopic dermatitis all over my skin, so that started to subside. And also asthma attacks, respiratory disease, that went away also.
So you got some immediate physical benefits from the practice.
It took years.
Yes.
It took years.
Yes.
But after about 3 years of the practice consistently, along with acupuncture, I
Okay.
no longer had attacks.
Okay. And so help with asthma, help with dermatitis. What effect did it have on your mind?
Better self-esteem, less depression. I was able to sleep better, no more insomnia. Being able to move with more ease and just being able to breathe.
Yes.
Breathing is so important, but when you suffer from asthma, you're often restricted
Yes.
or easily triggered, whether
Yes.
it's trauma from fear, seeing somebody be violent, or being bullied in school, somebody bullying or teasing
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Those are easy triggers for you to be, set off into an asthmatic attack.
Yes. And so the stresses of having difficulty breathing from the inside out, the stresses on the outside. And so as you did the yoga, you mentioned self-esteem.
Yes.
You also mentioned a little better control or regulation of your emotions to help with depression and so on, and
Yes.
dealing with fear and anxiety. So tell us a bit more about that. What practice that is so powerful that can help our bodies, help our minds, help us with regulating our emotions, which effectively affect everything we do?
Once again, as a child, I didn't really understand what was going on. It was my mother that was instrumental in teaching me how to slow down and how to breathe deeply, and different naturopathic doctors that we had. Whether it was taking herbs a few times a day, where I had to stop what I was doing and make the herbal concoction, or going to get acupuncture session and having to lay still for 45 minutes, or doing meditation with my mother for 20 minutes every day. It was just the repetition that over time got into my system and calmed my system down to where when I was having an asthma attack, it was shorter or less severe, to where if I was having an allergic reaction, it was less severe. And over time, no more reactions, to where I could dance and I could run and I could do whatever I wanted to do way more freely, kind of like a normal child.
Beautiful.
So quality of life.
Yes, the quality of life. And so you mentioned that your mother essentially taught you 3 elements of the practice of yoga. The yoga poses, the movements, the breathing, and the meditation. And so you grew up naturally with this integrated practice. So now you have joined the Niroga teacher training program that trains people to become certified yoga teachers. So what prompted that?
I lost my mother to cancer 8 years ago, and she died an awful death. She did her best to do as much natural medicine as possible, but in the end it was Western allopathic medicine that took over, and she was drugged up on morphine until her last days. And I did as much alternatively for her as I could, but she was in so much pain, and the way that, you know, Western culture does it is they just suppress it and numb it as long as possible. So watching someone who I love so dearly die from such an awful disease really transformed my life. I went from corporate America to really focusing on studying alternative medicine as much as I could and practicing it as much as I could, so that not only did I not have to die from disease, but because I knew while she was dying that there were alternatives. And I knew that it came from preventative measures, preventative care.
Yes. And it's a beautiful thing that slowly, as a society, we're moving from even the way we name these alternative approaches. Instead of calling it alternative medicine, people started to say complementary medicine, like there was something that Western medicine might have that it was missing. And now, of course, they're saying integrative medicine, the idea that together the whole may be so much greater than the sum of the parts. So as you go into teacher training, what are your thoughts about what you want to do with this training once you've graduated?
I very much want to work with women and children. I want to work for poor people of color, especially helping parents to have more skills and abilities to be with their families and help their children through the different transitions of life, but also helping children to be more empowered in themselves so that they can be more confident, as I learned to be, and to know how to heal themselves naturally, even if it's in combination with Western medicine.
So even as we heal ourselves, if enough of us do this practice, that perhaps we can heal our communities.
Yes.
I guess that's the dream. So tell us a bit more now about, you know, some of the major life happenings that have happened in your young life that have led to things that are well beyond mere chronic stress. You've also had to deal with a lot of trauma and the stress that comes from trauma. You want to tell us a bit about that?
I've experienced everything from sexual abuse and trauma to grief to loss to physical violence, depression, severe depression.
Yes.
And I've actually overcome, for the most part, all of it naturally.
Yes. So how did those sources of trauma and abuse and depression affect your body and your mind?
It depleted my body almost entirely.
Yes.
At one point I almost lost my life because of the amount of trauma I had experienced.
Yes.
And the way my body held it and
Yes.
didn't have a way of releasing it.
Yes.
Both from the mind space, but also just my organs almost
Yes.
shutting down entirely.
Yes. Trauma researchers, trauma experts around the world often talk about trauma essentially booby-trapping our bodies. So you lose control of your body, which is supposed to be our friend, to get triggered and re-traumatized as if totally out of our control. So you experienced all of that firsthand.
Yes.
And then what helped you pull through? What gave you the fortitude? What gave you the tools, the skills to come out of that, to build that resilience that you now exhibit?
I was able to pull from my childhood of yoga and meditation And a dear friend of mine came to my rescue and sat with me a couple times a week, just doing different pranayama, meditation, and eventually when I could move my body, yoga.
Yes. And so once again, the practice of yoga with the movements, the breathing, the meditation, this three-part practice once again gradually helped you pull through.
Yes. I still have slight pain in my body from time to time, but I can get through a yoga class, I can get through a strength training class, I can sleep through the night most nights.
Yes.
I do still have nightmares,
Yes.
reliving different trauma that I've experienced.
Yes.
I have my down days, but I have more up days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's not like the down days have disappeared,
No.
but just as with your asthma and with your depression, that the down days are a little less intense, are a little shorter, giving you more up days, as you said. That's beautiful, that's powerful. And once again, as you're learning these skills, just as your mother taught you, are you using these skills with those around you?
Yes.
So tell us a bit about that.
I do yoga with my community every Saturday, which is really nice. I have a healing group of friends that are an artist collective. We do yoga by the lake. And then I also do the Lake Merritt Stairs, which is, 4 flights up and 4 flights down, which is something that I couldn't have even imagined doing a year ago. But yeah, I have to make sure that I'm breathing properly and that I'm, taking my time. It's almost like yoga in movement.
Yes.
And I have my regular daily practice, which people come to my home and practice with me sometimes.
Beautiful.
And whenever I'm working with a client, a doula client, or a personal training client, I make sure to implement the breathing and the stretching with every workout.
So what a beautiful thing, not only building your own practice, but every time you're teaching, every time you're doing it with others, it is your chance to remember and to practice as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What do you think would happen? What is your dream with this practice?
I'd like to have my own healing arts center,
Yes.
whether it's a midwifery clinic where we do birthing, water birthing, and have pre- and postnatal courses for
Yes.
low income or sliding scale.
Yes.
But also just, I'd like to write guides, I'd like to travel all over the world, teaching
Yes.
people yoga, meditation. I really like to help empower others in the way that I've been empowered through yoga.
And so this empowerment that you talk about, essentially the regulating of our emotions, leads to self-mastery.
Yes.
What would happen if most of the people in our communities could exercise self-mastery most of the time?
People would be
What
way
would it
more
be like?
resilient. Yeah.
Yes.
There'd be a lot less war. There'd be a lot less fear-based projections.
Yes. We could literally transform our communities one breath at a time.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Namaste.